Now, my name's Adam Rowbury, and I teach in the Waterspring Discipleship School. I've been teaching there for a few years, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to come and share a message with you today. And so we're going to be in Matthew chapters 1 and 2 today. So while you're opening there, I'm just going to remind you, if you have a cell phone, please put that in the silent condition so it doesn't become a distraction during the service, and it'll certainly distract me. And if you have a small child, you're welcome here. They're welcome here. This is our family. We want you here. But if they do become fussy or distracting, we ask that you would just use the family room, and you'll be able to see the service, hear the service. You'll still be part of everything we're doing, but that's available for you. And so I want to welcome you all here tonight. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being here. Now, I just wanted to admit something to you right out the gate. I'm nervous. Yeah, I'm pretty nervous. Yeah, thank you. I wasn't expecting applause for that, but I'm nervous, and it's actually okay. I'm okay with being nervous because I'm not anxious. You see, anxiety is something that I always struggled with my entire life. Anxiety was always an issue for me, and I struggled with it. The problem with anxiety is it's a really poor ruler. Anxiety will rule you. And it ruled me. You see, it dictated and determined where I went and where I didn't go, who I talked to and who I didn't talk to, what I said and what I didn't say. Anxiety was a ruler in my life. And I had a great many other wrong authorities in my life, but anxiety, I would say, was at the top of the list. It was that thing that it was always affecting me. You see, the problem is anxiety will rule you. Nerves you work through. But anxiety will rule you, and it's a bad ruler. It's a bad king. It's a wrong authority, and what we're going to see tonight is wrong authorities wreak havoc in relationship. Wrong authorities wreak havoc in relationship. And we're going to see some of that in Matthew chapter 1 and 2. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Chapter 1's a genealogy. We don't need to spend all that much time there. I mean, I'm not going to bore you by reading it to you because I don't want you to fall asleep, because then I'd be more nervous, okay? So I'm not going to read it to you, but I think it's fair and important, actually, to point out this genealogy matters. You see, it's not that some guy wrote this book. It's that God inspired this guy, Matthew, to write this book. And part of this book is this genealogy. And so genealogies actually matter, and they're actually more meaningful than just, he begot him, begot him, begot him. And it's actually even more meaningful when you understand the genealogy, or at least consider it in the context of where it's found in the Word. In this case, it's found in chapters 1 and 2. It's in this context of chapters 1 and 2. So, but what I want to look at is this genealogy. It's an ancestry, right? It's the history of the family of Jesus. It says in verse 1, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And that's all I'm reading out of the genealogy, so don't worry. But this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the ancestry of Jesus. And so I want to take a look at just three characters out of this list of people. First one's Abraham. Abraham, right? A man of God, loved by God, blessed by God, led by God, and he loved God. He was the father of a nation, right? God promised you'll have descendants as numerous as the sands in the sea. Abraham, this man of God, so much faith he had that when God told him to take his son up as a sacrifice, he obediently did what God said. All the while believing, hey, you know what? My God is going to deliver. He's going to restore. He's going to do something, right? Such great faith. And yet Abraham, he had some issues. He had some issues. I would say one of the most glaring issues we see with Abraham, one of the most glaring faults, is how not once, but twice, Abraham allowed his wife to be taken into a harem. Why? Really kind of to save his own neck, right? And I'm not trying to tarnish the name of Abraham. Again, he's a man of God, loved by God, blessed by God, used by God, and he loved God. But he had some issues. Twice, he allowed his wife to be taken into a harem. He says, so that it may be well with me, right? Save his own neck. Now, the point is Abraham, at least in this instance or in these instances, had a wrong authority in his life. I would describe it as self-preservation, right? Self-preservation, the authority of self-preservation. Now, in Luke 9:23 and 24, Jesus tells us, he says, anyone who wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross daily and follow me. For he who wishes to save his life will lose it, but he who loses his life for my sake, he's the one who will find it. Right? We're told not to live our lives for the purpose of self-preservation, but rather for the purpose of serving others, following the Lord, being obedient to his authority. Abraham had issues. He had a wrong authority in his life. Now, wrong authorities wreak havoc in relationships. We see how people get hurt when we have wrong authorities in a position of power in our lives. See how Abraham's wife, she got hurt. No doubt he was hurt even from the guilt of having to live with what he had allowed to happen with his wife, this man of God. How about David? David, the mighty king, right? David, a man after God's own heart. David, he was a man of God, loved by God, known by God, blessed by God, and he loved God, right? A man after God's own heart. And David had some issues, right? We know, and some of you are probably thinking, yeah, we know what David did, right? Probably his most glaring fault that I can think of is Bathsheba and Uriah. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? He sees Bathsheba bathing and he's lusting after her. He takes her to himself, right? She gets pregnant. Now he has a whole nother issue to deal with, right? Because she's a married woman. Now he has to deal with Uriah. So he has Uriah sent out at the front lines in battle where he's going to get cut down, undoubtedly. David had some wrong authorities in his life. Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride. I mean, ultimately murder, right? For his own, to seek his own fulfillment or his own desire, right? Again, I'm not trying to tarnish the name of David. This is a man of God, but he had issues. One more. We're going to do one more. How about Solomon, David's son? Solomon was what? The most wise king, right? Solomon, he built the temple. He was a man of God, loved by God, known by God, blessed by God, and he loved God, right? But Solomon had some issues. Solomon had I think it was 700 wives. That's a lot of wives, I'm just saying. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Can you believe that? That is crazy. That's crazy. Now, wrong authorities wreak havoc in relationship. I just want you to think about having 700 spouses. Okay? That sounds like havoc to me. Solomon had some wrong authorities in his life. Probably greed, I would say. Definitely lust, arrogance, ego, pride. Solomon had some wrong authorities in his life. Wrong authorities wreak havoc in relationship. So what's the point? Well, the point is we are Solomon, David, and Abraham. We are the people of God. They were the people of God. We are the people of God. And we no doubt struggle with wrong authorities in our lives. So if we end here, if this was the end of the message, all I've done is make you feel bad about yourself. And right, and we're all sitting here going, yeah, I definitely have some wrong authorities. And so there's hope. There's hope. We're going to talk about the hope. Here at Water Springs, we call this our church family, right? This is our church family, and how blessed we are to have such a big, awesome, loving church family. And don't we want to think that it's all good? Or don't we just want to think, man, it's all good at Water Springs. Our church, these guys, yeah, they're great. It's just not true. I mean, we're great, yeah, but it's not all good. Why? Because we have issues. We all have issues. We all struggle with wrong authorities in our lives. Maybe think about it for a minute. What are some wrong authorities you've struggled with? fear, anger, pride, jealousy, lust, addiction. And we could go on and on, right? The list goes on and on. We all have our struggles. We're all part of the family of God. But wrong authorities will wreak havoc in our relationships. And so as we get into chapter 2, this is where the hope is. I'm going to share with you 4 points. That's 3.5. 4 points. I'm going to share with you 4 points that will help you deal with wrong authorities in your life. The first point is this: know who the right authority is. It seems so obvious, right? Know who the right authority is, because by knowing who the right authority is, you by default know who the right authority is not, right? If you know who the right authority is, you by default know who the right authority is not. Now let's look at the text. Verses 1 through 6 says this: Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. These magi, these wise men, come from the east, and they're seeking a king. They came searching for a king, and they say, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? You see, they came looking for a king, but there's a problem. There's already a king here. There's already a king of this area, this region. His name's Herod. They came seeking a king, but it wasn't him. He was the wrong authority. But you know what? They knew who they were looking for. They knew who the right authority was. They came seeking that authority. By default, they knew Herod was not the authority that they were looking for. Now, it's interesting because Herod, you could put yourself in his shoes, right? You're a king of this area, and you're a ruler, and you're probably really arrogant, and you're in power and stuff, and these guys come to your area, and they say, Hey, we're looking for a king, but it's not you. And you're like, what? Oh yeah, by the way, that king is in your kingdom. What? That's crazy. What's wrong with you? Right? It stings a little just to think about being Herod, but Herod clearly has some wrong authorities in his life, and he's the wrong authority as well. It says he was troubled in the text. It says Herod was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, I think it's safe to say, at the very least, that Herod struggled with insecurity, at least in this experience. He struggled with insecurity. He says he was troubled. He was troubled by what? Why? By the fact that they came looking for a king, but it's not him. He's troubled. He's got insecurity. Insecurity is a wrong authority. And what's interesting is it says, in all Jerusalem with him. So his wrong authority, his insecurity is actually affecting a great many people, not just him. You see how wrong authorities wreak havoc in relationship? And it says, he had gathered the chief priests and scribes of the people together in verse 4. He inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And so they told him. So it almost seems like he's becoming interested, which he is. But we'll see later why. Now, the second point, so the first point is know who the right authority is. The Magi knew who the right authority was. They knew who they were looking for. Do you? Do you know who you're looking for? Do you know who the right authority is? Do you know who the wrong authorities are? Or what they are? Second point, honestly and diligently seek the presence of Jesus in your life. First point, know who the right authority is. Second point, honestly and diligently seek the presence of Jesus in your life. We'll see how in verses 7 through 12 that plays out. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also." When they heard the king, they departed. And behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child and Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. Now, Herod calls the wise men to himself, and he asks, he says, "When you find him, send back word, and I'll come worship him also." Now, if this is all we had was these two paragraphs, we might actually think he's had a change of heart. We might actually think that he desires to have the presence of Jesus in his life. Now, he does desire his presence, but only so he can snuff it out. We know that because we know what the rest of the chapter says. He desires his presence, but only so he can snuff it out. You see, these wise men are honestly and diligently seeking the presence of Jesus in their lives. They're honestly and diligently seeking. And when they find it, it says they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. You see, these guys, they have the right authority in their lives. As a result, they're experiencing great joy. They're rejoicing. And when they see him, what do? Praise, right? They present gifts to Jesus. Now, this is interesting because I listened to a message by Pastor Francis Chan recently, and he was talking about how so often in the church today, church at large, churches today, we come to church and, sometimes worship isn't all that great. So it's like, yeah, it was all right. I mean, that's not really what I was looking for, or somebody prays with us and it's like, yeah, I mean, thanks for praying. It's not really what I was wanting to pray about. Or we get into the word and like, yeah, I just don't get it. Why should I read this genealogy, right? It's like, or we listen to the message and we kind of leave going, it was a decent message, but it wasn't that great. I didn't get much out of it. So often we're coming, seeking how we can be served, right? What is that? It's the wrong authority. It's the authority of selfishness and self-seeking, right? How can you serve me? Well, you didn't serve me well enough. That bothers me, right? These guys came with gifts. They didn't come seeking to be served, right? They had the right heart. They honestly and diligently were just seeking the presence of Jesus in their lives. And when they received that presence, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. So how can you deal with wrong authorities in your life? That's how. When I was a very small child, my mom tended to get into relationships with abusive men. And one of the first that I know of when I was really young, his name was Chuck. And Chuck was a very abusive man. And mostly he focused his attention on my mom, but he would sometimes give my sister and I some attention as well. Mostly we had to just watch her suffer. And I was like 3 years old, so really nothing you can do. And so we dealt with this for years. But eventually, when Chuck finally beat my mom to near death, she finally decided it was time to flee. And so she did the best she could to gather up her children and protect and nurture us while she fled from the wrong authority of Chuck in her life. You see, Chuck had some wrong authorities in his life as well. Anger, wrath, probably insecurity, fear, all kinds of stuff. But it was all the wrong stuff because guess what? People got hurt. Wrong authorities wreak havoc in relationship. people get hurt, we got hurt. But my mom, she gathered us up, like I said, and she fled from that wrong authority of Chuck in her life, and she did her best to nurture and protect us as we fled. And we see that brings us to the third point. Our third point is, how do you deal with wrong authorities in your life? Nurture and protect the life of Jesus in your life while fleeing from wrong authorities. I know that's a mouthful. I'm going to say it again. Nurture and protect the life of Jesus in your life while fleeing from wrong authorities. We see how that plays out in 13, starting in 13. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry. And he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more. Now we see here Joseph, warned in a dream by an angel of the Lord. God is warning him in a dream, and he tells him, flee. He says, flee, for Herod seeks to destroy the child. Take him, flee. Now, important thing to point out, Joseph has been pretty obedient up to this point. Now, he struggled in the beginning, and we could go back and talk about that. We're not going to, but he did struggle in the beginning, right? When he found out Mary was pregnant, he's like, hey, I'm going to divorce her. I'm going to do it secretly. But the angel of the Lord came to him and said, what? Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child within her is of the Holy Spirit. Joseph has been pretty obedient. He seems to have a right authority in his life. It's the Holy Spirit of God, God in the flesh. Joseph is listening, and he flees. He flees from the wrong authority of Herod. It says Herod was seeking to destroy him. Now we know something else about Herod. Herod was seeking to destroy this king, this Jesus, who was apparently a threat to him. Now, another wrong authority in Herod's life clearly is anger. Clearly is anger, maybe even bitterness, wrath. What is the result of that wrong authority in his life? A lot of people die. Children. It says 2 years and younger, all boys. A lot of people die. A lot of people get hurt. Why? Because Herod has wrong authorities in his life. Wrong authorities wreak havoc in relationship. And so we've got to choose our king. We've got to choose our king. And Joseph, he flees, right? He's protecting and nurturing. Now, this is so interesting. Have you ever really thought about how Jesus, the creator of all things, right? The Alpha and the Omega, right? How Jesus, the Savior of the world, was once a tiny baby. I mean, really, it's not just, our nativity scenes and stuff. He was really once a tiny baby. And in this story, he's vulnerable. He's vulnerable. The God of the universe is vulnerable. Isn't that interesting? God needed nurtured and protected from wrong authorities. That's the point. That's the third point, right? Nurture and protect the life of Jesus in your life while fleeing from wrong authorities. That's what Joseph did. And we see how Herod became exceedingly angry because of the wrong authorities in his life, and a great deal of people got hurt because that's what happens. Point number 4, last point. Always be prepared to respond to new wrong authorities as they rise up, because they're going to. That's reality. That's just reality. There's always going to be another wrong authority seeking to take the place of the last wrong authority that you fled from. That wrong authority that you fled from long enough and hard enough, and you leaned enough into that relationship with Jesus that authority no longer had any authority in your life, right? And we see in the text, well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but we'll see in the text how Herod had to die. Herod had to die in order for his influence to no longer have any control over Joseph. Always be prepared. It says in verse 19, "Now when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, 'Arise, take the young child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the young child's life are dead.' Then he arose, took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene." Now, Herod died. Herod died. You see, Herod was the wrong authority, and when Herod died, Joseph saw it as safe, right? It's now safe. Why? Because that wrong authority is dead. It has no life in my life. And that's what we've got to do. It's almost like you got to starve it, right? You starve that wrong authority so that it just dies. It has no life in your life any longer. And we see Joseph goes into the land, but then he realizes Archelaus, Herod's son, is reigning in his place. Now, no doubt Archelaus is the wrong authority. And no doubt Archelaus has some wrong authorities in his life. And so Joseph is warned by God in a dream. Go to Galilee. So how do you deal with wrong authorities in your life? Well, you need to always be ready to respond to new wrong authorities as they rise up, because there's always going to be one. There's always going to be another wrong authority. There's always going to be wrong authority seeking to take the place of the authority of Jesus Christ in your life. There's no end to that. But what a blessing it is that we get to lean into this relationship with Jesus, the creator of the universe, he who died for us, paid the price for our sin. What? You get to have a relationship with him? How amazing is that? And so just one more time. First, you've got to know who the right authority is. Second, you need to honestly and diligently seek the presence of Jesus in your life. This is how you deal with wrong authorities. Third, nurture and protect the life of Jesus in your life while fleeing from wrong authorities. And finally, always be ready to respond to wrong authorities as they rise up, because they're going to. Now, this should give you hope. I hope it gave you hope, because this is so good. Because God, in his grace, not only told us what we should do, but he told us how to do it. He gives us the solution. It's all right here. Now, I'm going to close by sharing this poem with you. And this poem was written by somebody from our congregation just this last week. And it's interesting how perfectly it fits with this message. But I promised this person I wouldn't reveal their identity, so I will not. It says this: "I wish I could drop kick my pride. It takes me on a bipolar ride, exalting me far above my station, dropping me down in the depths of frustration. I can't seem to harness its power. In the shadow of my sin, I cower. What I need is a firm foundation, the rock of my salvation. He enables me to see with eyes of humility. All I am and have, He gave. Myself I am unable to save. From pride in my self-esteem to finding my value in the King. That's the journey I'm on, seeking to follow the Son.
Watersprings Church. Check us out at watersprings.net. And if this video blessed you, please click the subscribe button. God bless.